welcome to the multisensory approach to instruction. And I am Vonda Adams. I'm the math consultant here at KVEC. And alongside me is...
I'm Chasity Craft. I'm the literacy consultant here at KVEC.
The purpose for being here today, our learning targets, is we're going to obtain some hands-on activities and tools to instruct phonological and phonemic awareness. We're also going to explore some math concepts with the use of math manipulative tools, and we're going to explore some learning styles and a multisensory approach to instruction. So that multisensory means that we use more than just one sense. We're seeing it, we're hearing it, we're saying it, we're touching it, and moving around even, if we can. All right. So, first of all, let's talk about why it's so important to use the multisensory approach. So we're referring to Hattie and Yates. And with Hattie, when you may have heard them refer to the Hattie effect size. So with Hattie effect size, what he's done is just a study that was done of the effectiveness of different strategies when teachers are presenting in a classroom. And in this case, whenever you're working with your students in the classroom or in your small groups. You'll see that if it ranges by 0.4 or higher, it's in that blue section, and that means that that's our zone of proximity. That's where we want, that's what we desire, is to get into a 0.4, to use a strategy that will get us as the most bang for our buck. And of course, if it falls below 0.4, then it begins to decrease in its effectiveness. So some of the strategies we're going to share with you today fall well within that blue zone. Response to interventions, that's that RTI that you hear talked about quite a bit, and that's when you're working with that child or a small group, and it's just intense interventions, intense strategies that you're working with. Direct instruction, or just to name a few, that's 0.6. You've got early intervention, 0.45. That feedback where you're sitting with them and you're talking one-on-one is also very effective. So,
And the ones that we pointed out here are all the ones that would go with like small group instruction,
absolutely.
Which is what you guys would be helping with. Let's look at this little visual here. It's the cone of learning. And the purpose of this is just to kind of give you an idea of how we, and when I say we, it's just human, everybody learns and remember things. So if you look at the top of the pyramid, you know, if you just read something, I mean, how often have we, I mean, when we were in school, it's like, okay, read this and you know, do it yourself. So if you just read it, then you're only going to remember 10% of what you read. And as you progress down to the bottom of that pyramid, then you see you hear 20%, or you remember 20% of what you hear and read. And then as you go down, you get to 50% if you do both. And then if you say it, it goes up to 70. And that's, for example, it's like participating in a discussion. And like, for example, like today, the activities that we're going to look at today, Vonda and I, you know, literacy and math are really kind of complete opposites as far as concepts. But as we talk through these tools and the multisensory piece behind it, we're participating in a discussion with each other. We remember more of the activities that we're doing. And then and you know, I've always heard you don't really know something until you teach it. So if you're teaching something, then you're going to remember 90% of what you say, you do it, and you know, you're reading it. And if you're actually, you know, doing it yourself, then that's the most effective way for people to remember things. So that ties into that multisensory. That's why we are trying to get away from the sit and get, like we talk about. We don't want to continue given just a stand up presenting the lesson to them and then letting the kids move on. We want them to be able to be active in their learning and practice what we're trying to teach them, because it helps with that retention.
Right. Yeah, I can so relate to that, because I can remember when I was that's just been my learning style, is to sit. I would get by myself, I'd make my little note cards, and you know, I had written them out, and I would sit and I would just say it. I had to say it out loud. I couldn't just look at it and try to remember it. I was actually talking to myself and saying it. So and this was way before I was well aware of the cone of learning. It was just a strategy that I figured out worked for me. And so I would get when I was in college, I'd get in my dorm room and I'd have my little index cards that I'd made out, and that's how I studied. And then once I got it really good in my head, I'd go to people in my class and they would want me to tutor them. So I was teaching it. So really solidified my learning. So it is effective. It really is. Tried and true.
Okay, so just really quickly, so Vonda had mentioned a little bit when we say multisensory. So what we're doing is kind of like, and we've already talked about, it's you hear it, you see it, and then you do it. And if you look at the stats on the screen, just really quickly, the percentage of school-age learners, when you're doing auditory, if you're just telling them something, if they hear it, you're only reaching 20 to 30% of your kids. If you are just presenting it visually, you're only reaching 40% of your students. And then if you do the kinesthetic, which is the moving, the doing, you're only reaching 30 to 40%. So when you're presenting a strategy, and if you are incorporating all three of those when you're doing it, and we're going to show you that today, then you're reaching all of those groups. So you're reaching all of your kids. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's really important. And it's not necessarily, you just have to find the child's learning style. Well, if you do all three strategies anyway, then you're going to hit them all. Exactly. So, and that's why it's just really important to incorporate this. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to get in. I wanted to just kind of show you this a little bit. The phonological awareness continuum, why that's important. What we're going to look at today is the phonological awareness is your, it's the sounds itself. It's not necessarily the writing. It's not the phonics piece where they're actually writing letters and blending words. It's the sound. That's basic foundation. Rhyme is the most simple. If you look at that at the top, it's your simple concept, and then it builds. Theoretically, in a perfect world, you want the kids to progress through that. They'd be able to rhyme and then be able to have the alliteration, and then being the syllables and sentence segmentation is being able, you would be surprised if you said the dog ran away, that some kids would not be able to distinguish the pause, that those are 4 words. So you have to teach them to listen to those, the pauses and that where the sounds blend together and separate to form words. And it's just, you just don't think about that. And so you go through and progress on those, because ultimately what we want them to do is at the bottom is the phonemes, which is the letter sounds. And if they have those letter sounds and know that, and you can blend the at and blend it to say cat, then that helps them learn to read. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And this, talking about why phonological is important, because it does help understand that the alphabetic principle, even though we're not actually showing them that k equals the letter C and what C looks like, we want them to understand that the sound of k has a letter representation. And when you put that symbol to that sound, you can form words, and then they can decode those words. So that's why understanding those sounds is so important. And the reason why it's difficult, and this one always gets me, because when I was in the classroom, and of course I was teaching students that had difficulties with reading, and you teach them these rules, and then the English language is like, well, yeah, this is the rule, but this word doesn't follow the rule. And
rule breakers.
It is, they're rule breakers. And so they, the students get frustrated, and it's so difficult, because so in the English language you have 26 letters in the alphabet. Okay, with those 26 letters you have 44 phonemes, and that phonemes are sounds. So like, for example, the C, I've been using the C as an example, it says k and s. So, it's very difficult for students. And then the sounds, so you have 44 sounds, and then those sounds are represented, and get this one, 250 different spellings. So like the example of F, or the F sound. Okay, the F sound is represented 4 different ways. It could be spelled PH, F, GH, and FF. I mean, and so, and then like I said, and you can't teach them. Sometimes they're blended together. You don't automate like the TH sound. You can't go so it's just very difficult.
Okay, so now let's talk about the difficulty with math, understanding that and why it's so difficult for some of our students. First of all, numbers are so abstract. We have to intentionally put the number, like the number 5, what 5 looks like, the amount. We have to be intentional about that because the kids, first of all, parents are really good about teaching the kids to count because, you know, that's the thing you want them to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I've got an 18-month-old grandson, and when I'm playing with him, we're always counting, you know. Well, no, you can't believe that. I'm a math girl. But I'm always counting with him. If he hands me something, I count 1, 2, 3. Well, you know, does he understand it? Maybe not, but eventually he's going to. And what I want him to understand is that when I say a number, it has a meaning. That it means that there's an amount that goes along with that. It's not just a song, which is what happens with the alphabet as well. You know, kids learn how to sing the song, and elemental P sounds like one letter, you know? Same thing happens with numbers. They just go on and on and on. Also, those new concepts always build upon the previous ones. We really have to be very conscious about making a really good foundation in math, because if we skip a stage or skip a piece of what we want our kids to learn, then it sets them up to fail as they try to move forward. You have to build that really strong foundation before we can be really good math students throughout the rest of our school careers or the rest of our life. And of course, those concepts must be understood and not learned. It's not something that you memorize. There's no way that you can memorize every math problem that you're going to encounter. You have to understand why the math works the way it works. And I always like to think about reading the same way, like you were just mentioning, all those sounds. There's no way you can memorize all of that. So you're going to have to learn the rules that go along with why it says what it says, maybe because it comes at the beginning, or maybe there's a vowel that comes right after. You know, those types of rules is what the kids will have to learn. They have to understand how they're used. Same thing in math. And then, of course, it requires lots of practice and lots of patience and lots of what we call productive struggle. You have to allow the kids to work through it. You can't be really quick to just jump in there and help, because that's not really helping them. If we jump in too soon and don't allow them time to explore using these tools we're going to share with you, or just for them to fail, that's okay if they make a mistake, because lots of times we learn from our mistakes. I know I personally learn the best whenever I'm struggling with something and I've made several mistakes and then finally figure it out. That's whenever I know it. That's when I figured it out. I mean, Chasity and I have worked here quite a bit with what we're developing these trainings, which is what we'll do with this one. We'll turn it around into an asynchronous, where we'll set it up to where it will make a quiz and it'll send you a certificate. Well, that program is really finicky, and if you don't do it exactly like it needs to be done, you want to pull your hair out. So it's taken lots of productive struggle to get to the point where we can do that and be fairly efficient at it.
Okay, so really quickly, now that you've understood why this is important that we do this, we want to show you where do you begin, because you don't want to teach them something they already know. And then you also don't want to start at a spot to where, like Vonda said, you know, they got to have the foundations that build. You don't want to start on a concept if they don't have those foundations already. So how do you know where to start? Sometimes for phonological awareness, we have a PAST assessment, we call it. And the PAST stands for Phonological Awareness Skills Test. And there's different categories. I'll just show you really quickly, and you could maybe drop that in the chat. Okay. Vonda's going to drop this website in the chat, and you can download it, the assessment, and it gives you instructions, and it tells you exactly where the student is and what concept they fall under, so you know exactly where to start. And sometimes, and some of you all may have already administered this screener before, and if you haven't, you know, that might be something you may want to suggest to your teachers that you work with. They may not be aware of that. And also sometimes, and it just depends on the setting and the situation, but you know, you may be given a group of students and already the teacher may say, hey, these kids are working on rhyming. But the teacher may have already done this assessment themselves. Mm-hmm. So this is the PAST assessment is the number one assessment that you can use to determine where they are in this concept.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we have with math, this is just one particular screener, the link that you can go to get that in, to download these is how you have to do this. You can download from this link, from this particular link that we're going to have here. But if you'll go back, Chas, and click on I downloaded the fall screener, just click on that fall one. You get an idea of what it looks like. The same concept with math is that you have to, just go ahead and scroll up it. You have to assess where they're at. And you may be asked to do this as part of your duties, to sit with the child and actually do this. And it's done in an interview style is how the math is done. So you'll have lots of tools and you have lots of cards. This particular screener here starts in the fall. And I think it starts at kindergarten, works its way all the way up through 5th grade. But here you can stop right there. You can see this is the recording sheet that you would use with this particular one. And you would see that it tells you what to say and it tells you how to score it. Like if you say, I'd like to hear you count, start counting from 1. And of course, they're going to count and keep on counting. And then whenever as far as they can count, you record where it says counts 2. And then if it's correct, then you get 3 points. If they try to try and do a second attempt, and then of course if it's unsuccessful, then you get the 1. There's a place where you make notes. That's super important. It's super important to write down exactly what might have happened during that time. Did they start counting and stop and then go back and start over again? You can record something like that. You could actually use the notes if they left out a number. You could actually write and make a note there what number they left out. If they skipped 7, then that type of thing. So this is really important. It's a really great screener. We actually have used these ourselves personally. They are really good. You get lots of good information from them. So it's something you may want to check out later. It's something that we will attach later on to the hauler when we upload this. It's a screener that you might want to share with the teachers that you work with, and maybe they may want to use it as well.
Yeah. Okay, now for the fun stuff.
Yes.
All right, we're going to get into doing some of the activities. So the first one we're going to use is the pipe cleaner and the beads.
And of course, if you look at yours, you actually have red beads on yours as well. Well, the reason that those red beads are on there is because this tool actually is going to be used in it's the next session that I will be doing at 10 o'clock for algebraic thinking. So this is multi-purpose, this tool is. So I removed it for the sake of this presentation because we only need the 10.
And that's the thing about these too, is if depending on what you're working on, you could add them and take them off and things like that. The color for reading when you're doing literacy, the color doesn't matter. I know some with the math, when you get in that, the color does matter, but for reading it does not. So you can use whatever you want on this. Okay, so for the first one, you look and you see the first concept that you can do is the spoken word. And that's what I was talking about when you're just speaking and saying sentences for kids to be able to identify how many words are in a sentence. So for example, what you would do, and again, if you all want to get yours out and do this along with us, that'd be awesome. So you're going to say a sentence, and as you say it, you're going to slide the bead for each word. So for example, if I said, Tom ran home. So I'm going to say, Tom ran home. So each one I'm going to say, Tom ran home. And then I'm going to take my hand and cover the rest of them up just so that they don't get confused. So after I say that, then I'm going to say, okay, let's count these beads. 1, 2, 3. So there were 3 words in that sentence of Tom ran home. And then again, you would say, I have 2 pets. So you say the word, I have 2 pets. And then you want to say it like you're like in general conversation, just I have 2 pets. But then as you're demonstrating, you can slow it down and emphasize the pause so that the students can hear it. I have 2 pets. And then, okay, let's count the beads on this one. How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 words in that sentence. So that's one that you can do. Another one is sounds. When you get into the next part of phonics is once they do the letter sound association. So if they are working on the word cat, then you could say, okay, let's sound that one out. Cat. Okay, so you can determine how many sounds are in a word. So you go from how many words are in a sentence, and then you also can break that down even further when you're breaking down the words. How many sounds are in a word? And then if you do, any mom, mom. And if you notice, when I get finished and I say the word at the end, I do the slide with my finger across, and that's just a little motion. But this is your all 3 sensories that we were talking about. So as we are moving that beat, it gets that those kids are getting that motion. They're saying it as they move it. And then you can also have the word display, which we don't, but you can have the word display here, like on an index card or up on the board, on a sheet of paper, have them looking at it. So they're seeing the word, they're hearing it, and they're also moving. And then when they do that motion, what that does is just reinforces of reading left to right. And when they write, you go from left to right, that directionality. And one more thing with the literacy part with the pipe cleaner and the beads is syllable counting. So we did individual sounds, but then you can do syllables. So for example, if we had the word, I keep saying we had done a thing last week of pollinator. That's a big one, but I wanted to try to use more than 3 of my beads. So if you were using the word pollinator, then you're going to break that up. Okay, so pollinator, let's break that up into syllables. And sometimes you may, you have done the clapping with your kids. You can pollinator. That is one way. You get that movement, and you get that verbal. But you can also use it like this. So you can scoot a bead for each syllable. So you're going to break it down. Pollinator. So how many syllables does that word have? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I like the way that you can see the beads when you're the syllables to count them, because when you clap them out, they may lose track of how many syllables they've clapped out, especially with a word like that.
Yes.
So I like the fact that they could actually count those beads too. I'm all about counting.
Yes, absolutely.
Which leads right into my
you're right, and the bead is the visual representation of that syllable.
Yeah.
Because when you get into those big words like that, you do, how many times did I clap? I don't know.
Exactly.
And then this number here, when this is a good strategy to find syllables. But you're trying to keep up with how many you've counted, and you got to separate them. So it's difficult.
Yeah. I think this is an awesome tool, obviously. So I'm going to take over and talk about counting. With this, we'll have our math moment, as I call it, with these. And with this tool, you can, of course, just count. And when you just slide and move, and again, we're in all these the multi-centered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, you just count as far as they would need to count. And of course, what's great about this is you can customize these to how many beads that they need to be working with. Also, working on that one-to-one. Obviously, that was part of one-to-one. If you're sliding and saying a number each time you slide, it's very important that you do that, because if you don't, this is what you get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If we don't make them slow down and count and say one number as they slide, that's what you get. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Personal experience. And then, of course, another way to use this is one to one, not only sliding and counting, but you could just have them spread apart and they touch and count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, another way to work on that one to one. Also could be used for one more or one less. If we have, let's say let's count and see. I've got 1, spread them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would one more be? Well, one more would be 6, and you slide one more, okay? Or you can start with that 5 and say, what would be one less than 5? And you just take one away, and you see that it would be 4. So it's a great way to work on one more, one less. It's really a tough concept for our little ones to understand. And then, of course, you can work on that fluency. I love the piece about with working on fluency with tools. We have to do it. It has to be something. You cannot learn math. You have to understand math. Remember? So I said earlier, you have to understand it. So you have to be able to visualize it. You have to be able to see it. So you have to use the tools. You have to put them in the kids' hands. So in this case, I would, if I had a kindergarten child that's working on 5, and it may not be just a kindergarten child, maybe a child that's working at a kindergarten level in math. And let's say we're going to work on just 5, fluency to 5, then I would only have 5 beads on this pipe cleaner. And we would talk about all the ways to make 5. Well, I could do 1 and 4. Or I could do 2 and 3. Or I could do, look at that, 3 and 2. And you get to talking about those turnarounds and those fact families and that kind of thing with it. Or 4 and 1.
And I really love this because I was just thinking about my own personal experience. I mean, I learned math facts, but to really, this gives them the concept like you were talking about, like you were doing one more and one less. Well, when they're young, you know, they just know one, but that adds on to the addition and subtraction later. And then when you move into those harder concepts, then they're like, they truly get it, not just memorizing those numbers and things. And but yeah, it's all about visualizing with math. It's all about, first of all, you work with the tools, and then we have what we call a CSA approach: concrete, semi-concrete, abstract. The semi-concrete is where we have the students draw. So we might actually give them the beads, and they would do 1 and 4. And then down here on another sheet of paper, they would draw 1 bead, and then they draw 4 beads. That's helping them to be able to later on visualize it. And then the last step is where we actually add in that abstract piece, which is those symbols, which comes very last. And it was just like with your language, it comes last. You don't introduce what a letter A looks like until they understand what A sounds like. Yeah. Same thing with math. We don't introduce what 5 looks like until they understand what 5 is. That it's actually this in many different ways. Okay? All right. Okay, so the next one is cubes. You have Unifix cubes and also some counters in your bag. For the most part, and we will distinguish, but some of these activities that we're going to talk about, you can use either or. You can use them interchangeably. More so, I mean, you could do them with both. More so, I think, with math than literacy. But these, and I'm going to be quite honest with you, until I was going through these and just double checking, I didn't realize how versatile these jewels are that you could add in your toolbox. If you just have a couple of these things, you could do so much with kids and teach so many different concepts. So let's get right into what some of those are. Okay, so the first one is syllable blending and segmentation. So for this one, I am going to use Unifix cubes just because they stick together, and it will give them that visual of concept of blending together. So with this one, we're going to do, for example, if you had the word zebra, okay, at the beginning, you're only going to give them however many cubes it is. So zebra has 2 syllables. So at first, you're going to only give them 2 cubes. And then you're going to say, okay, let's do zebra. If you're wanting them to blend it together and say, put zebra together, then you're going to present it to them separate. Okay, you're going to have zebra. What word is that? Zebra. And then they're physically pushing it together, so they're blending it. And then say, okay, so I'm going to give you the word zebra. Separate that into 2 syllables. Separate zebra into 2 syllables. Zebra. Zebra. They have 2 syllables. Okay, and then as they gain that skill, then you're going to move on to 3-syllable words and 4-syllable words. But it's the same concept. You would just present them with, the 3 and say, okay, or 4. And helicopter. This represents helicopter. So let's separate helicopter into 4 syllables. Helicopter. 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 And then they physically push it back together, and it just shows them that words can be broken apart and put back together. And then also with the syllable counting, as they're broken apart, they can count. So with the helicopter, once they move that, then you can hand them like the whole roll, because this is when you can fully determine if they've mastered that concept. Because if you're giving them the answer of if helicopter has 4 and you're giving them 4, then they're going to, if they have mastered that, they know that that's going to be the answer. So you're going to give them a row, and then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to give you the word pineapple. Take the cubes that you need and separate pineapple into syllables and tell me how many syllables you have. So now we are actually combining the first and second concept that's on your screen. So they would look at it and they're going to say, okay, pineapple. Okay, well, that's all the word. That's all I need. So I'm going to push those away, and I have 3. Pineapple. 1, 2, 3. Pineapple has 3 syllables. Okay, so and that's how you do that. And then going on to syllable deletion is you want to fully understand that they can break apart words. If you say, okay, I have pineapple, pineapple. Okay, if I take this first one away, what do I have left? Apple. So they got to be able to take pieces of that sound away from the word and still be able to blend the other 2. And then the same thing, and the difference between syllable blending and counting and deletion and phoneme blending and counting and deletion is you're doing individual sounds. Phonemes are individual sounds, and syllables are chunks of words. That's the small difference between the 2. So it's the same concept, except now you're doing each sound. So for example, if you had the word bat, I'm trying to speed up a little bit. If you had the word bat, okay, and now with this one, you could use the counters with this if you wanted to, because sometimes it's easier to pull them away. So you can use them interchangeably. Bat. So they can see it's got 1, 2, 3 sounds. Bat. And then for them to blend it together to make a word, bat. And then if you're wanting to add sounds, I like to use 2 different colors, just again, that representation. So if you wanted them to do, if you gave them this and say, okay, this is the word at. I'm going to hand you a k, and what word would that give you? At, cat. Okay, and then you can say, all right, now I'm going to take the k away. What do I have? At. And then you can do that with a different sound, the sound, and things like that. And now at this point, you're not saying, I'm going to give you a C. You're going to say, I'm going to give you the K sound because you're looking at sounds. Okay, Ms. Vonda?
All right. So again, we can use these tools for math as well. We can use them for counting, of course. And of course, like Chastity said, you can use counters for counting. You can just give them a bunch of counters. And I do mean a bunch. You just throw them out there. They're just haphazardly like this. And you ask them to count them. And lots of times the kids will do this. They'll nod their heads. I call that nod counting. They think they can't touch them. So sometimes you'll have to model for them. You say, okay, let me go first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And of course, you'll see I organize them. And I did that, I modeled that for them because that's what I want them to do. I want them to organize as they count. So that's a little strategy you can do. If they're not doing it quite the way you think to where it's effective and they're not getting it and they're doing the nod counting, then you just say, okay, I want to go first. And my turn, or say my turn. And then you just show them and model how, because our kiddos need organization. We have to have some organization or it just becomes a mess. And of course, this is a good activity to work on that one-to-one corresponding again, one-to-one. So you can actually, I'll switch up tools. And it's important to switch up tools, by the way, because if you use just one particular tool, they think they can't change gears. They think they can't do it with another tool, but it's the same type of thing, okay? So you can just give them a bunch of cubes and do the same type of thing with that. And of course, it's really important to work on that one-to-one correspondence again, because like I said, even if you line them up for them and ask them to count them, you're going to get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 until you make them say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And a little trick that I like to do is I like to use a solo cup, and I did not bring one over here with me. But if you have one of those little solo cups, they're really super cheap to use, and you have them drop them down into the cup, which would sound like sitting at a table. 1, 2, 3. Then they can only say it when they hear it hit the bottom of that cup, and that makes them stick to that one-to-one correspondence. You can do the same thing with one more, one less again, like we did earlier, just a different tool. Let's say I've got 4. This is a train of 4. And what happens, so what do I get if I put one more on? And they can see, just put one more on, and now I have 5. Okay, I've got 5. What would one less than 5 be? Take one away, and you've got 4. I also like to do this as a tower. The kids will see, I'll hold it up so you can see this way. If they see it this way, that's really good for them to see, like if they want to compare. Let's build one like this. They want to compare the 4 and the 5, which looks like this if you lay it down. So that's a good way to use, really good to use 2 different colors. And of course, like Chastity mentioned earlier, with math, we like to keep our colors the same, and this is why, because it's really powerful to see it. And I'll show you another reason why here when we move right into this fluency piece, which you can do lots of things with fluency. It's like I said, our kiddos are working on 5. In fact, just knowing what 5 is, the different ways to make 5. We can play a game called Snap It, and they can just take 5 and snap it apart and see what are the parts. 3 and 2, 2 and 3. Snap it again, 4 and 1, 1 and 4. And then we get really creative and we get really challenging sometimes with it. And we put it behind our back and we snap it. We know we've got 5 and I snap it. Well, there's 2. So what's behind my back? I had 2. I had 5. There's the 2. So what did I leave behind my back? Right? And they can guess. They guess and then they can check. They pull it apart and see. Okay? Now, of course, another way with these colors is they can build 5 and build it as, and you can see the two parts this way as well. So there's all kinds of activities. I could talk all day long about how to use these Unifix cubes in particular with building fluency, but of course our time is running out.
It is, and that's why we chose, like we was talking about earlier, bang for your buck for your kids. We wanted to give you guys the bang for your buck, and if you have these, you can just do so many different things with them. I mean, it's just phenomenal. The last thing that we have is you guys would have a card in your bag. I just use this. This is just a folder that I have cut and drawn. It could be, you could use a sheet of paper or a whiteboard or just anything, and you just draw 3 columns and number it for this final activity that we're going to do. What you do with for the literacy piece is called phoneme isolation of initial and middle and final sounds. So what that is you are having them identify a specific sound in a specific part of a word. So for example, if you give them the word pick, okay, you want them to identify where did you hear the k sound. Now we know pick is P-I-C-K, and I chose that one on purpose because we're not looking for letters, we're looking for sounds. So CK makes that sound together. So that's why I wanted to kind of use that one as an example to show you we're just focusing on the sound. So if, okay, so pick, where do you hear pick? It. Okay, and then they take the car and they can, you know, you let them play it up however they want to, and then they're going to take their car and they're going to drive it. It's at the end of the word, and they're going to park it in the parking lot at the end. And then you can very quickly, easily see, especially if you have a small group, you can look around and very quickly see if everybody got it correct and they understand that they can identify the final sound. And then if you give them a word, hop, and where do you hear the ah sound in hop? And then they're going to take it and then pull into the second one. So you just, and then you can do that for the beginning. So, and you know, you can mix it up, or you can do, at the beginning, when you're first teaching the concept, you just want to always do just the beginning. You give them several words over and over to have them find the beginning sound, and then you mix it up and make it more difficult for them. And again, once they master that, in order to be able to know if they truly understand that they can identify the first, middle, or the last sound, then you're going to, you know, one time you're going to give them a word where they have to park it at the end, and then you're going to give them where they have to go to the beginning. So you're going to, it's, you know, just mix it up a little bit so they can, they're not picking up on your pattern of answers, that they're truly hearing that sound. And that's and also you can use these boxes for like blending very quickly. If you have these counters here for phonemes, you can also slide these in here to blend. So it helps separate that visual, it separates. So if you had hop, then they can go hop, hop. So they can see, you know, just that movement. So you can use this for that as well.
Okay, so finally, I'll tell a little background on how this presentation actually came to be. Is Chasity did a presentation with just the literacy piece, and I tagged along to help out, just kind of help out, hand out materials and that kind of thing. And I was sitting there watching, and I thought, I do that with math. I use that in math. So I started having these math moments. And so that's how this little presentation came to be, is we just decided to combine and present both literacy and math using these tools. But now this one is not in a early building as in far as counting with my math moment with this one. It reminds me of a place value chart is what it reminded me of. So I always think about, okay, this could be, like you could write your number up here, and let's just keep it this way, 123. And you could have your car, and you'd have your, okay, drive your car into the tens place. So they would drive their car in. Okay, so what's the value of that 2? Well, that value of that 2 there is 20 because it's in the tens place. Just a fun way to have conversation about place value, and that, you know, it depends on where the digit's at, the value that it has. So it's like, obviously it's way above counting and one-to-one, but it's also a neat way just to use this tool for kids that maybe at that level need to work on that as well.
And that's when the whiteboards would come in, because you can erase your numbers and put different numbers in for it. So that's it, right? So that is all of our activities that we have for you guys today. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our emails are on our beach towel. Okay, we'd love to get your feedback from how this presentation went. We hope that this has been beneficial for you today. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, yes, it's been lots of fun.
It's always love doing these activities. So we appreciate you guys, your time. We appreciate the effort and what you do for our kids each and every single day, not just the instruction, but all the lunches and just, I mean, you guys just do whatever needs to be done. And we do appreciate you all for that. You keep our schools going, and we can't thank you guys enough. So